All right, I think we are live on YouTube now. Um, so let me just make sure that it's loading all right. Perfect. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Helia, and this is our last Q&A session for this round of presentations. We're just gonna have everyone introduce themselves. Maybe Priya can go first.
Hi everyone, my name is Priya and I graduated from UBC with a degree in chemical biology last May, and I currently work at a biotech company here in Vancouver called Zymeworks.
Thanks, awesome. So Virginia, do you want to go next?
Hi, my name's Virginia. I'm a fourth year biology major. I'm on co-op right now and I'm working at BC Cancer.
And Hasti, go ahead.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Hasti and I'm also in fourth year. I'm studying microbiology and immunology. And yeah, this is my last semester, hopefully. In terms of where I'm working at right now, I'm working at the AVGA lab at UBC, which does some research about tuberculosis.
All right, cool. So let's get started with the questions. So our very first question, what made you choose STEM as a major?
I guess I can go first. I have always been interested in science. In high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I did well at most things. So when I came to university, I kind of just gravitated towards the classes that I enjoyed most in high school. For example, I took a biotech class in high school, which was really awesome. And that love for science just kind of continued to grow throughout university. And both my parents are in STEM, so it kind of was an easy choice for me.
So in high school, I really had no clue what I was going to do. I kind of gravitated like within like all the humanities, and then I took biology 11 and I had two really awesome high school biology teachers, and they just made bio seem super interesting and super cool. And I remember like vividly we were learning about like DNA replication and all of that, and I just really loved it and enjoyed it and decided that I wanted to do at least something in science when I went to university. Didn't kind of changed courses, but I just knew I wanted to be in STEM.
So for me, I think ever since I was like younger, I just really liked the idea that science or STEM allowed for just asking so many questions and like had that element of curiosity to it. And so I really like that you could always ask something new, find out something new. And I'm also a very visual person, and I feel like in STEM, you get to connect everything to real life. It's not so much like, I don't know, let's say like math, where it's just like theory. It's very like you can connect it back to reality, which I like.
Great. So kind of moving on to your university choice. So why did you end up choosing UBC to study STEM?
So for me, I knew that UBC had a strong research founding. So the research at UBC is insane. There's a lot of different professors who do really amazing research. It's cutting edge research. It's well funded. So that's kind of what drew me here. And UBC is a great campus. It's really big, but at the same time, there are a lot of things that you can do to make your experience feel smaller. And so I wanted to feel like I was a part of something bigger, but also somewhere where there were opportunities to have more one-on-one time with people. And kind of you get to pick and choose what you want because there's everything, like everything you could possibly think of, there's a club for. So it was an opportunity to kind of figure out what my interests were. And I knew there'd be clubs like this where I could share my passion for, in this case, STEM, and sharing my love of STEM. But, there's almost any club that you can think of. So it's a really good opportunity to learn more about yourself and give back to the research community, give back to the community in general. Yeah.
Kind of along the same lines as Priya, like you see UBC's name on a lot of big facilities like around Vancouver, where they have partnerships. And so I kind of wanted to, like, for example, I think I want to be in healthcare. So going to UBC, knowing that they partner with like VGH and a bunch of major corporations, it was a pretty easy choice because I felt like UBC had a lot of opportunities that maybe not other universities have, or maybe I kind of wanted to stay local. So like not a lot of other local universities have. And also like I researched their co-op program a lot and saw that there are so many different jobs that you can get with co-op. And I thought that UBC's co-op program would be a super good opportunity to get a lot of experience. So I thought UBC would probably be the best option for me.
Yeah, just to like touch on what everyone said so far, I think it was just the number one thing for me was the opportunities for research at UBC and how really there's like, it's hard to remember sometimes, but there's actually like cutting edge research happening all the time at UBC, like related to the pandemic, like the nanoparticle technology for Pfizer, for example, was like Dr. Collis at UBC. He was one of the main people that led to that. So just to think about how the vaccine is like one of the reasons why it's there is like because of someone at UBC, or like I don't know, like for example, someone who came up with sequencing, which is used a lot for PCR testing right now, was also at UBC, and there's like a building named after Michael Smith. And the other thing for me was just the fact that it's close to home, and it's really important to have like the support of family members and friends when you're like transitioning to university life.
All right. So let's talk about your university experience and start with your experience in first year specifically, and what you wish you had known when just starting in university.
Yeah, so when I first started, I actually wanted to be in engineering. I didn't get I didn't get in the beginning. So I wanted to switch into engineering from science, and I didn't get in, and I took it really hard, but I wish I had known to not be as hard on myself, and that first year is the hardest, and that you can learn to grow into anything if you have an open mind. And every if you put in the work, you will have opportunities. And yeah, just kind of all in all, to not be so hard on myself and to know that first year is as bad as it gets, and then after that you kind of grow into yourself and learn how to study and learn how to do well in university.
I wish I had known probably that, well, we always hear that all these programs are super competitive and like competition is like one of the main things we hear of, but I wish that I had known that not everyone is there to compete against you. They're there to be your friends and to help you out. And study groups are honestly really helpful, and working with your classmates shouldn't be looked at as a hindrance or like that, or you shouldn't really worry about what other people are getting. You should just try and work together and make your university experience better by making friends, and everyone else can, well, you just don't really need to worry about like getting into your program or like competing against your classmates. They're your peers and they're there to help you.
Yeah, I wish I just knew to like take it easy and not treat it like a race. Then it would be okay to take my time with courses and not overwhelm myself with like the maximum number of courses I could take and whatnot. And also just remind myself that yeah, like Priya mentioned, that it would take some time to adjust to how to study. It's like you kind of have to throw away your rule book for how you studied before and adjust to the university content. So yeah, I wish I had that in mind first.
Yeah, those are all super, relatable on my end as well. So I guess like kind of relating to that, what are your what was the most surprising thing about university for you?
I think especially at a big school like UBC, um, sometimes it's easy to get lost in feel like you're lost. And I think the most surprising thing was kind of how much you have to advocate for yourself. And even though it's difficult in the beginning, it's a really big learning opportunity, because you're the only one in control. Like no one's going to tell you what to do. You have to decide which major you want. You have to decide what classes you want to take. Um, and so in the beginning, it was surprising, but having that freedom is empowering. And you can definitely turn that into something and really work on being independent and taking responsibility for your future. And I think it can be a really positive thing, especially coming from high school where, you do get a lot more support and you have a bit more, people better, your professors, your teachers, you may have advisors, but yeah, just a long-winded way of saying that you have to advocate for yourself, but it can be a good thing.
Probably how much freedom you have. There's like so many different like types of courses that you can like choose, and one thing that surprised me is like I really didn't know anything about like psychology going in, and I took a bunch of psychology courses, and now I've kind of fallen in love with it. So there's so many different things to choose from, and you could surprise yourself by what you fall in love with at university if you just give yourself the chance to actually explore and take a bunch of different electives and kind of reach outside of your major a little bit. Because I feel like a lot of people are set on the courses they have to take, whereas this is your education and you can take control of it and give yourself the opportunity to find a passion or find something that you love.
I think something that surprised me was how it can actually be pretty easy to make connections with people in the field that you're interested in, like reaching out to experts in the field that are teaching you every day. So like going into it, you might be kind of scared to go up to your professor and introduce yourself, and it can be intimidating. But like once you realize that like, oh no, they most of the time they just want to help you. I think you realize how much easier than you thought it is to make those connections and network. So that's something that was a nice surprise.
Awesome. What are your best study tips in university, and how did you find that you were able to be most successful or, make the best out of your studies?
I think for me, it was learning how I study and learning that there may be different techniques you need to use for different classes. So I was in a combined major, so I did half chemistry and half biology. So I had to figure out what are the techniques that I need to do for chemistry. And for chemistry, I would write down my lecture notes, and then rewrite them again in a prettier way, and then make flashcards. So that worked for organic chemistry, but for biology, some classes I was okay typing things. So it's just really, you have to figure out how to be adaptable and how to learn in the different classes that you take, because, OChem is more visual. Other biology classes, you may also need to be drawing things, or it could all just be kind of concepts and you can type everything out. So I think it's kind of a learning process to figure out how you learn. And once you figure out that, you can leverage that to manage your time and be successful. Another thing, one more thing, is planning. Make sure you have all your deadlines. If you work best on your computer with a calendar, do that. If you need a paper planner in order to cross things off and write in all your deadlines, do that. But everyone kind of needs some sort of system in order to stay on top of things. So that's another tip.
I agree with what Priya said. I think that the best way to study is to figure out what you need for each of your classes and how to study for each of your classes, because studying for something like psychology or an arts class is a lot different than studying for a STEM class. So for me, I utilize practice questions a lot for biology, and not every professor gives you practice questions, but if they don't, make your own, go through the learning objectives and write your own practice questions and then quiz yourself. And I think that's a really, I don't think it's underused, but I think it's a really good way to figure out the gaps in your knowledge if you can't even answer your own questions. So yeah, and like I said earlier, use your peers. If you can get into a study group and you get a whiteboard at UBC and just write down what you need or draw a diagram, it can really help visualize, and then they can also find gaps in your knowledge as well that you might not be able to see.
Yeah, those are all really good tips. I think other than just taking your time to figure out what works for you, what you can do right off the bat when you start university is just stay consistent with it. Like, start reviewing right away, just so you don't get overwhelmed near midterm time and final exam time. I found myself dealing with that many times. So just review, every other lecture, so that you're caught up all the time and you understand what's going on. And another tip that I still use a lot is, just because the content can be so overwhelming and could be so much to cover, is to just stick to the learning objectives that your profs provide you with and just narrow it down that way, so that you kind of just don't worry about the stuff that aren't going to be covered or aren't really as important. Yeah.
Great. So our next question, I guess, is kind of relevant to high school students that are in maybe grade 10 or just younger grades that are just starting to go into their senior years. And I guess if you've had any experience doing IB or AP courses in high school, would you recommend doing this? If you haven't done it, what has been your experience in university not having been exposed to those types of courses? So I think let's just talk about that, because that might be useful as well.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So I did AP when I was in high school, and I took quite a bit of AP tests or classes, and I was lucky enough that my teachers taught to the AP tests, so I also took the AP tests. And I think for certain things, it's worthwhile to take the credit if you do take the AP test. So for example, I took an AP English class, which I got credit for. So I skipped English at UBC because I had credit, and that was kind of a good decision. Wasn't really interested in taking an English class at UBC. It fulfilled a requirement that I needed to kind of get off my plate. So because I did that, I could focus more on my core classes. But I also made a mistake, and I took AP Calc. I took the test, did really well, and then decided to skip Calc 1 in university, which was a mistake because when I had to take Calc 2 in university, I didn't have a strong enough foundation in Calc 1 still. So I think my recommendation is for classes that won't be your core classes in university, skip them. If you want, take your arts credits, skip them, whatever. But if it's a core class, I would definitely recommend retaking the test, even if you have credit for it.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with Priya. I took a full IB, and I think it really helped in the fact that I got credit for both first year Englishes, and then I got credit for an elective because I took history. And even though I just missed credit for biology, and even though I didn't get that credit, I think that IB helped me for first year biology because it gave me a really good foundation for like a class like biology 112, where it's all about cells, and IB biology really went in depth with that. So I think I still wouldn't have skipped biology 112 or gotten credit for it, but I think it gave me a really good foundation. And then again, like Priya said, I took math IB, and I really don't think it set me up any better for Calc 1 than regular like high school calculus would. If anything, it probably gave me a little bit of a disadvantage, because it really, I just wish I took regular calculus instead of IB calculus, because there's so much material that it covers that you really don't get a good understanding of like derivatives of really anything that's covered in Calc 1. So yeah, I would take, like, it's a good program to take, but I would just kind of stick with your electives, I think.
Yeah, so I think in high school I took 4 AP courses: biology, chemistry, the English one, so literature and language, and research, which was, I don't know if a lot of schools offer that. I was lucky enough that my school offered that. And I decided for university, I used the credit that I got for biology and for English. So like Priya said, I think the English one was probably the best choice, just because it's not one of my core courses, and I wasn't really interested in taking it again. So that was good to get out of the way, 2 courses out of the way that way. And I also used the biology credit because it only covered, I think, one of the first year labs and then the evolution content one. And I wasn't really going to follow up those courses with any other courses. So that was, I think, also a good choice. For chemistry, though, I didn't use my credit because I was just worried that it didn't cover everything. So what I did was I looked at the syllabus first when I started first year, and I saw that there was quite a bit missing from when I did AP. So I just figured I'll take it again. It's fine. And yeah, that's my experience with that.
Great. Thank you guys for sharing all that. It's definitely helpful for all of our high school students that are watching or might be watching later. So I guess we can just go over like a couple more questions. So how important was the role of research in your studies? I think a lot of you are either in co-op or are kind of working in a research lab or something similar to that. And how important was that in better understanding your studies?
Yeah, so my first co-op, I started out at an academic lab at BC Cancer, and that was kind of my first exposure to, really working in a lab. And so I think I started working in an immunology lab, cancer biology, and I hadn't done any of that in university at all. And I realized I really liked it. And so it's really informed my career. And I think it just kind of shows that, you can have a degree in STEM and, not really, necessarily take classes in whatever you may end up in, but with a degree in STEM, you get a really solid foundation in learning the concepts of how do you plan an experiment? How do you write up your conclusions? How do you write a report? How do you follow a protocol in lab? And so even though I didn't have the background, the technical knowledge, I knew how to do those things, which helped me excel in that position. And I think, I wouldn't have found immunology, and immunology is still what I do at my job right now. I wouldn't have found that if I hadn't explored research. I wouldn't have found it through my studies because it wasn't in my curriculum. Um, and I also volunteered in a lab when I went back to school after co-op, and it was a biochemistry lab. So I really think, exploring those options can help you figure out what you like to do. Since you won't necessarily get those experiences directly through courses or even lab courses. So it's just kind of another layer of exploration, and obviously getting research experience helps build your CV so you can do what you ultimately want to end up doing.
So I am in fourth year and I've still yet to work in a research position, just because of COVID, and neither of my co-op positions have actually been in research, even though I thought this entire time that that would end up being my end goal. And I think that research is like definitely valuable for gaining experience, but I think that you can also get valuable experience in other positions, even if it's not necessarily research. So, for example, my position right now is in a lab, but I'm just basically I go through the motions of being in a lab, but I don't actually do any research. But I've still been able to get valuable, like I've been able to network really valuably, and I can still see other opportunities within the STEM field that even though I'm not in research, can still get those opportunities and see what else is out there that isn't necessarily academia.
Research has been really important for me throughout my university experience. I sort of started dabbling with it a little bit in high school, like I mentioned, and then just my program in general. It's very like research based, especially as you get into fourth year. You have these two labs where you essentially lead your own research project, and you work with a team, which is very much like how you would in a lab. You work with a lab manager, you work with a project manager, you talk to your PI. Like it's kind of like a simulation of that, and you also publish your own paper at the end. So it's so just my program is very much involved in research, but also I think working in a lab, like an academic lab on campus, has been a really important experience for me because I learned things that I don't think I would have learned otherwise. Like I learned that I don't actually want to work in the lab for the rest of my career, just because I think I'm a more people-oriented person and I would like to have more interactions, and it can be a little bit isolating sometimes, in my opinion. And also, I think I just learned about what kind of topics I like. So, in the lab that I'm working at right now, it's immunology and bacteriology based, but you still we still do a lot of stuff with drug risk discovery, and that's when I realized, oh, I actually would really like to go into the pharmaceutical field. So I think it's interesting because you can learn things that you wouldn't have otherwise, maybe in your courses.
Awesome. I guess you guys already touched on that a little bit during this question, but what are your final goals like after you guys graduate? Or Priya, like I know you've already graduated, but what are your like career options and what are you thinking about doing later on?
Yeah, so I currently work at a biotech company. The company makes therapeutic antibodies for the treatment of cancer. I work in the lab. And I guess that was kind of my goal. So I definitely want to continue working in therapeutics. Um, I think it's really fulfilling, and I just want to continue learning about drug development and working in different areas of the process. I really am hoping to kind of move out of the lab at some point, like in the future, 10 years or whatever. Um, but I definitely want to learn more about clinical trials, and maybe implementing trials, setting up clinical trial sites. And I think like as you enter industry, you realize that there's a lot more roles in STEM than you initially think when you're in high school or university. For example, we have a lot of people in business development who have science backgrounds, and they work on getting partnerships. So you can get money in to fund your research or partnering with big pharma. So yeah, I think my goals are just to continue exploring and trying new things.
To be completely honest, I have no idea what my end goal is. I kind of had my heart set on research when I started co-op, and then both of my positions have been in healthcare. So completely different field. And so I've kind of been going back and forth between industry, healthcare, and then research. I think it all depends on what I apply to for grad school. Or I'm currently working on a project right now for co-op where I want to interview a bunch of healthcare workers and kind of that are involved in clinical trials, because that's my team. So I want to kind of see what their roles are, how they got there, why they love what they do, if they love what they do, and kind of go from there, and then maybe apply to grad school and see where I end up in a few years.
Yeah, I actually didn't really know what I wanted to do until like maybe 6 months ago or something like that. And then after working in that lab that I spoke about, I realized I want to go into pharmacy. So I'm hoping to go to pharmacy school next year. But at the same time, like because I have such a love for research, I would really like to go into clinical pharmacy to be exact and do more research about therapeutics at the same time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Any last tips for anyone that's considering coming to university or pursuing STEM?
Have an open mind. Sometimes things will happen and you're like, oh, I didn't get into this program, or I wanted to be in this class, or I wanted this job. Like everything always works out, and you just have to make the best of whatever situation you're given. And there's always things to be learned, and a love for learning will get you very far in life.
Yeah, nicely said.
Yeah, I was gonna say don't be afraid to take risks, because sometimes risks can definitely pay off.
All right. Thank you guys for joining, and thanks everyone who is tuning in or might be tuning in the future. I hope these answers helped you kind of guide your way